Whereabouts are you located? Whereabouts are you located right now? It was Northern Europe.
All right, so for today, what we are going to do is basically first talk through the design decisions that's made this flow. And so what this flow is on this side of the map, we are showing migration to Texas. So people from all parts of the United States, in this case, moving to Texas. And so we see them consolidating into the specific counties. And what I like about this is that it shows the people, basically movements of people into the states. And by stacking the dots, you get a sense of the magnitude in terms of where people are locating themselves. I was shocked to learn that in the United States, the Mississippi River, which is around like right here, that 80% of the population lives east of the Mississippi, which is crazy. But when you look at it, even in Texas, you'll see that it's east of the Mississippi that the majority of the population lives, even in Texas. And then this one has sort of a unique design element here, which is on the opposite side. So to utilize the back of the map, which you don't see very often, but this is saying migration from Texas. So now instead of looking at people moving to Texas, we're saying where are the people that were in Texas that moved out and where did they go? And so same thing where we're looking at the spread of people, but now we're looking at them leaving Texas and where they end up both in Alaska as well as the rest of the country. And essentially by being able to show both, we can stack them next to each other and start to get a sense of the total number. And then the colors are actually representative of the original county. And so you can actually, I don't know if this is interactive to click on. Yeah, you can click on it and basically you can see this color is showing everyone from Harris County moving to Minnesota. And this is everyone moving to Nebraska. And the color is representative of where they're moving from. So this is Bexar County and so on and so forth. So that's the flow that we're going to recreate. And before I jump into how, I want to just a little bit talk about why on just a few elements here. So why did we make some of the design choices we did on this? So the first design choice is the number of people that are represented by each dot. Now, normally, or in this case, it's 100 people is each dot. And that shows up as you know, these towers that are coming across here. Now I could make that number smaller by making it like 1,000. And I'll update this form actually. And then you'll notice how these get smaller and smaller as I continue to add more zeros into it. But that was sort of just a number that's we landed on that sort of shows the magnitude in a dramatic way. But the other thing was to show colors as where they're coming from, or sorry, where they're going to. So Texas is sort of the main focus. And so by having each color focused on each little county, we can start to then mentally follow these. If I was going to do this again, I might actually even have more colors to pick from so that there are unique colors for every county and there's not any duplication of colors. And that's all set within the color scheme here on the right. So this is color scheme defaults, but I could change it to 12 color or, you know, create our own color, which maybe we can do as we rebuild this one. And so the first step, first what I'm going to do is actually go into data sources, and you'll notice that there is just one data source here, Texas county to county, 2015 to 2019, in and out. And I'm going to download this file, and that way I can send this over to you. And I'll also, for anyone watching online, we'll post this so you have access to the Google link as well to be able to follow along to rebuild it. And the other elements here to show is where does this all come from? And that is from government websites in the United States. But essentially from that, what you can attain is this document that has every state as the origin state, and then it's showing all the migration from that geography in state A to all the other counties in the United States. And so it's this document that's pretty rich in terms of being able to build any of these visualizations or to combine states and look at particular flows. So that's the where it's coming from. And so let's actually start to rebuild. Just two other things before I jump into that. One of which is these text labels. I'm actually using these text labels to help show which side of the map you're looking at. And so normally when we set up labels, we actually have them facing the camera. So as you move the camera, the label rotates with you. But in this case, I don't want it to rotate it because I want it to only show this side as the migration to Texas and then everything else the opposite. And so by keeping it static and also having a background so that I can't see it when I'm on the opposite side, I'm actually able to use it as sort of this block to look through. So we'll go through that on how to do that. And then the last thing, which I'm starting to do on most of my flows actually now, is to use a button to show the source. So in this case, this button down here actually opens up the raw data source of where this came from. So it goes to the US Census site and you can pick from it. And so that way, when you want to share it with someone and they want to get to the original data source, they don't even need to go to find the address that's just there. And so that's sort of a nice, easy way to get to it. And that's just adding a button to the visual. Now, I think the only other things really is just some of the animation of having the map rotate so that you can show the movement of people. But yeah, that's more or less it. Before I start to dive into how, are there any questions you had or have on this visualization of what I've shown so far? And any questions before I start to dive into how we build it?
No.
Okay. All right. Cool. So let's do it. So I'm going to start over here, start fresh. And so from our main page, if I click on Create New, this will create a new flow. And I'm going to start by loading in that data set that we just downloaded. And as I pull it in, if I click on Select and Upload again, what I'll do is it will actually open up the data file so that you can see what's going on. And so the thing to know is that there's geography A and there's geography B. Geography A is basically Texas, like the county in Texas, and then B is the movement of people or the other location. And so there's the flow from geography B to geography A, so moving to Texas. And then there's the counterflow, which is the flow from geography A to geography B. So those are the two. And then there's the net. Okay, well, how many people came or left in total, and that information. So that's a basic summary of what we're looking at here. And right now, each dot that you see is a point per row. So for every row in this data set, it is creating 1 point. And I think there are 31,923 rows in this data set. So fairly large, actually, in terms of, it's a fairly large data set, actually. And what we're going to do here is instead of doing point per row, we're actually going to start to switch this to do point per value. And the reason we want to do point per value in this case is because we want to look at the number of people as one dot is equal to 100 people. So in this case, and in this case, so for Dallas County as an example, that's this would be representative of 3 dots, basically. So 321, or if I made it every 10, that would obviously see a lot more dots, but it's going to start to get quite unmanageable. So I'm going to keep it at 100 for now, but we can always adjust that number later on. But that way we're really showing that each dot is something. It is representative in this case of a person. And so we're going to use the column, the flow from B to A. So this is going to be everyone that's moving to Texas. And you'll notice that it gives me an error right away when I have a point equal to 1, because it's way too many points for the system to actually map. And so I'm going to update this. I'll start with 1,000 actually. And that mostly is just to make it easier and more performance while we're setting it up. And then we can always go back and adjust that value a little bit later to fit our needs. Now, the other thing we're going to need to do is add a map. So let's add a map in here, and let's focus just on the United States for this. And I'll move this back, and I'm going to make it a little larger. Right now it's 1 meter wide. I'm going to make it 3 meters wide. This number is meters. So when you're actually in augmented reality, that number does matter in terms of how big it's going to look in your room. So yeah, something to note. And I'm going to make it just a little bit at an angle. This is just my personal preference, which is to give it a little bit of a tilt, so that as you're presenting it, you have a little bit of a 3D-ness, and it's not just totally flat. And then on the swarm, so I'll go back to the swarm definition. This is where you essentially select the charts. And the thing we'll be using here is map to regions. And I realized that I neglected to mention that this flow in particular uses a custom map. And the reason it uses a custom map is that we're looking at actual county information, as opposed to just the state level details. So I apologize for skipping over that. Let me go back to it. So let me keep this, or I'll just keep this as random here for a moment. But if I go back to the map, what I'm going to need to do is upload a topo JSON file. And so we have a data library that we sent access to in your welcome email. And so in that email, you have access to this demo median assets folder. And we'll be adding more and more maps in to the system, so you don't have to do this, but in the meantime, you do have access to all of these, all of this information. And so if I look at topo JSON, and then I have all of these different ones to choose from, I'm going to look at USA counties. And that will load in. And now what I should be able to see, I'll turn off the swarm, is now I have a map of the United States, but on a county by county basis, and Alaska's up there. So now I have all the counties. And the reason that's important is so I need to be able to know how can I link my map up. And so the easy way to tell that from a topo JSON file is on the map. You'll see here each of the regions, and you can actually click this and click get available regions. And what it does is it copies it to your clipboard. And so if I just open up Excel or anything else and hit Control V or paste it, and there it goes. So basically it's listing to me all of the region information that it has. So it has 3,222 region numbers, which is basically the name of each county. And that should be a way we can link this all up. Now, I do think I saw one other file. I'm just going to try it real quick right next to it, which is USA Counties FIPS. And the reason I want to try that one is that I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this map Yeah, so this one has one additional identifier, which is the ID, this FIPS code, which is a number that identifies the county. And in the raw data sets, we have that FIPS code. And it just makes it way easier to be exact with the county, as opposed to the name, which has all sorts of other things that can make it harder to link up. Yeah, for numerous reasons, mostly because county names are often duplicated across different states, and so you run into some issues there. So I will use that map instead, and I'm going to put this let's put this on a sphere, because why not? I'm a big fan of keeping things in a spherical projection as opposed to keeping on a flat map. And it just helps separate the dots a lot more. It will add a little complication as we build this, but we'll manage. So the first thing I'll do is I'm going to hit reset camera. And when I hit reset camera, this puts the camera in the default position. And you look and you see a blank world. And the reason is because the map is on the opposite side. And so I'm just going to rotate this map. And there we can see the United States come back into play. And so now we're good to go, more or less. So I'll move this map just slightly, just to get it in the right orientation or position here, just to make it a little easier to zoom into. Okay, great. So that was just a little setup. Apologies for not having that earlier there. But what we're going to do now is back on the swarm to continue. We're going to actually go to map to regions. And we're going to use that map, and we're going to use the region column for FIPS code. So this is the FIPS code of geography A, and this is the FIPS code of geography B. And we are showing movements, if I recall correctly, from geography B to geography A. And so the thing we care about is FIPS code geography A. And so by doing that and turning this swarm back on, that we should start to see these dots start to go onto the map. And what I'll do is turn on the grid. Did I do that right? Let me just double check something. Yeah. I apologize. It's actually GOA was the column to select from. And so if I open up the document here, yes. So this is the GOA is the column basically we're picking from, and then there's GOB. And I forgot to mention that there was actually an additional data step where the FIPS code, or this code here, is a combination of the state code 48 plus 3 digits for the county code, so 001. And so we were given data that says state code, FIPS code, and then you needed to combine them in order to get to the right FIPS code. So that's definitely a detail that I did not mention earlier, but is essentially how that is created, and that was created separately on a processing step. So now we have all these dots on a map, and we can start to actually stack them and do other things. So the first thing is to set the right color scheme. So let's just pick a color scheme here based on GOA, which is how we line them up. And I'm just going to pick sort of at random here. But if you wanted to make a new custom color scheme, you can do that within the Environment tab. You can actually just click Create for a custom color scheme, and then start to add colors in, and then basically you can tune these as you wish. And I don't know how many counties there are in Texas. I know there's a lot, and so you would need quite a lot of different colors to pick from if you want a unique color for each county. So it might be a little tricky to do, but it should be possible, or it's very feasible. But essentially I can now select that color scheme as the main option here. And the thing I want to do is we're using point per value. So each dot is representative of 100 people, or in this case, 1,000 people so far. And I want to actually start to stack these dots on top of each other. And this is where it gets a little confusing here, but within the swarm definition, we can change it from this custom to what we call just columns, skyscrapers, or stacks. In this case, I want to use, I believe it's stacks, where it is now stacking these dots on top of each other. And so we're seeing all of these bars go off into space. And it's all one column wide. If you'll notice that it's one column for each county. And it's one column for each county now. And then if I turn on grid, what grid does is it spaces the dots out within each county. And so by making this a little smaller, I should be able to essentially make it so that it's trying to fit more dots in the confines of the borders of each. I'll make these a little smaller so you can see the borders of each county. So if I look at from the top here, you'll notice how this is the outline of the county, and essentially it is keeping the dots constrained to the outlines of that county. So in some sense, you're looking at somewhat of like a population density by being able to account for the area of each of these counties. I'm going to make these dots a little bigger again so that we can see them a little more clearly. So this is sort of that origin step of like, okay, here are the people in Texas. Where are they moving to? This is from B to A. So this is where they're ending up, rather. So this is where they end up in Texas. And so I would like to make one more step now. And I'll click Add Step. I'll duplicate that step. And now instead of looking at or having it mapped to region GOA, if all I do is change it to GOB, what this will do is actually put this on the map for the other locations. And it's taking just a moment here to do those calculations, which sometimes takes a little bit of time. And so now we see those same dots, but now they are spread around the country in terms of where they moved from. So where they moved from. So if I just now go from step 1 to step 2, you'll see that animation happen of where people are moving to. And there's one thing you might notice, which is what this is showing is also people within the state of Texas moving to other places within Texas. And that actually is a majority of people is sort of showing that. And if I make this even 1 point equals 100, this should get a lot bigger actually here, and we'll see a lot more dots. It's going to do some more calculations here. And so now you can really see some of that movement within Texas. So in the original file original thing that was presented, I was just focusing on not intrastate travel within Texas. And so in order to do that, we have to apply a filter, and that filter is done within Snapshots. So thinking of the process, we upload the data, and then snapshots are basically transformations to the data that we make that will apply to anywhere that data set's mostly used, basically. And you have to reference the snapshot, but that's basically the idea. You're pre-filtering it, you're pre-sorting it, all of those types of things. And so I'm actually not going to do it for this example. I just don't want to really get too far into it. But essentially what I would like to do is I want to filter anything that's going to GOB, and I don't want any GOB to be the state of Texas. So all I need to do is, GOA to, where is it? There we go. Oh, that's right. So I know that Texas is the FIPS code 48, or sorry, the state code 48. And so here in GOB, if I filter the state so that it is everything that's not equal to 48, that should create what I need. and then I'll create a snapshot. And now in the file, I can actually select snapshot 1, and then this should remove basically all of those data points that had people moving from Texas to another county in Texas. So the map will look a little more clean, and we can see people from where people are moving to that doesn't include Texas. And so yeah, so that's basically the gist of sort of how we created this, or how we set it up. And yeah, so there's way more details we can start to add in, but on a pretty basic level, in some sense, it's a very I think easy to understand concepts, which is a dot is representative of a person or number of people. We're putting it on a map, and then we're showing where that person moves. That's basically it. And you can start to apply that to actually lots of different, geography views, views of, the movement of category, or like how you categorize someone in terms of buying patterns or personas, or, there's all sorts of ways you can slice and dice it. But I think that movement of people and showing things as point per value is very pervasive. And so, yeah, so here's the end flow that we created, which shows the movement of people. This is a little bit larger in terms of number of dots. So performance-wise, it does push things a little bit, but yeah, still very doable. And so, yeah, that's what we're sort of left with. The other element to quickly add is that text elements. So if I click on plus for the text button, I will create this new text object. And that text object, we can add a background. And I will say movements from to, I'll just say movement from Texas. And then I think this is 2015 to 2019. And you'll notice that this stays with the camera, which I think is okay in this case. The one thing I'm going to do is turn off borders so that it doesn't have a border on it. And so that way we're just left with this black text. And then just so you can see how we would do it if we didn't want it to rotate, all we need to do is click on where it says face camera, and that will stop the rotation from taking place. And we could put this, right next to the map as an example. And so now we have created this. Now, the one other thing is that you'll notice that when you were in the flow editor, you saw swarm, map, image, text, and you'll see that I see a lot more things. And the reason I'm seeing that is that when you start the flow editor and when you start working with it, you are in the simple mode. And if you want to get to other options or see other things, it's in this advanced UI. And you get to that through this little hamburger menu. And that gives you a whole slew of other things to select from. But the main thing really is swarm. I mean, it really is mostly swarm. So it's mostly dots and then connecting those dots with lines and other attributes. But the one thing I've started to do is if you add a button, and that button will show up here, and I can have it face the camera. I'm a big fan of really using buttons as a data source, so that people can both see what the data source is and get to it no matter what device they're on. And so the action that you need to link to that is to open link, there it is, open link. And so I basically need to put in the URL of where I would like that link to go, or the data source that I pulled it from. And then if I click on this button to show as 2D overlay, it will then show up here as well. So it can both be in the 3-dimensional scene as a button that you can click on, as well as as a 2D button in the scene. So it sort of accounts for both the use case of being in AR or VR as well as on a flat screen. So I'm a big fan of that mechanic to be able to set. So let me pause there. What questions do you have? And Bill, is there anything else that I should add in?
Yeah, so I have a question, like, can I have a picture as background?
Yes. So the you're talking about the background image, like this, yes. So
Yes.
to change that, it's in this hamburger menu, environments. And in that environment, the very first thing you'll see is background blue lights. And we actually do have some different drop-down options here. Sorry, my computer just, oh, that's probably why. I just have a few too many things open. So we do have some options built in. So we have different sort of default ones you can pick from. Stars at night. I'm a big fan of mountains at dusk. I think that one looks really nice. But you can upload your own. So you can click on upload image and upload your own image. The one thing I'll note is that it's not typically like your normal photo because it's a photosphere, so you want it to be fairly large, different format. We can get into how to format those, but that's where you load it. So you can load that in directly, or if you don't like any of the options, you can just use gradients and define your own basically scheme. A lot of times I do this where I just make everything black and then I make just a little bit lighter, typically not in the middle. I usually make it a little lighter a bit on the bottom and on the top. And so that way when you look down, you can see some light, and you look up, you see some light, but it's dark in the middle. And that adds for really, really good contrast. Because the reason we use black so often, and why it's sort of dark themed, is that in augmented reality, black is basically invisible. It's the lack of light. And so when you're presenting, you can't show black objects as easily. And so having things that are light to block, to show or shine really work well for AR. So yeah, that is, good question. What other questions do you have?
I think, yeah, you answered all my question actually. And I think for the line, it will be like a chart, a normal chart.
So
yeah.
Okay.
The swarm plus the line, I guess. So
yeah, and just to show what that might look like, just to hit on that point, I'm just going to create a new step here, and now instead of looking at this as a map, let's just look at it like a line chart. And so to typically do a line chart, we do scatter plot. On the width axis is usually time. In this case, I'm going to actually just maybe use, I'll use the state code, I think. All right. Sorry, just thinking about this for a second. Yeah, so I'll use where it's going to, and then I want on this side, the height axis is from B to A, and then the depth axis, I'm actually going to use the county name. Maybe too many county names, just state. Okay. Well, that doesn't make much sense. I'll use county. Or make it a little bigger. A little bit. Sorry. There's a lot of counties in Texas. I'm quite shocked.
That's a surprisingly large number.
Yeah, it's like really quite a lot. But just back to Texas then. So we'll just look at one. So normally you see time series data. So I guess this is not the best chart to select from. So that's going to be a little harder to do.
Yeah, but for me the most important is the visualization. So yeah, I can know how to like create the chart. So I think it's helpful.
Yeah, and I guess just for that is exactly part of that little section I was showing here for templates. which we do have some templates that are just for that. So a connected scatter plot, I think, is what we're calling it, or for a more or less or here is the line chart as well. Yeah, so this is a very basic one, where essentially you put the dots on the map, on the scatter plots, and then the one thing you need to do is add connections, and that's how you connect the dots together to show a line. And that there's, you know, more things you can do with this, even just by adding the depth axis to be like continent in this case. You'll start to separate those out a bit, and can do more things like that. So definitely ping me if you get stuck, or have anything come up. Just hit this little question icon and click get support, and that will take you to this little Zendesk thing, and write that and we'll respond very quickly. Or you can join our Discord, or if you have our email addresses, send us a note. We are pretty responsive. So yeah, anyways, Bill, is there anything else I should touch on in terms of this flow and or anything else?
Thank you for this session. Actually, it's so like I really know now how to work with it more and more.
Okay.
Thank you very much, and thank you also for your time.
Of course, this was really awesome to get to meet you, and looking forward to see what you build. I love your spirit, and I can't wait to see what you do in AR. I think that's going to be a really awesome video. So look forward to seeing it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, hey, nice seeing you again. Look forward to talking with you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.